I have to remember. Okay, so I'm just going to review, Hazer, over. The first question was about the method of prompting a client in terms of bilateral stimulation, and we reviewed that the TheraTapper starts from the very beginning, the eye movement through the TheraTapper or just tapping, and that the rapid eye movements does not begin until after the body scan, and then after a minute, the client is prompted to orient themselves to the movement of energy from right brain to left brain, and that eye movement continues for another 3 to 5 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. You can judge based on your intuition, and then you take a break to check in, thoughts, feelings, images, and body sensations. But the TheraTapper or the tapping continues throughout the entire process. Sharon is now asking a second question, and that is, would it not make sense, in addition to rating the validity of the positive cognition to see if it goes up, should we also not rate the negative cognition to see if it's going down? And as I said, in theory, it makes a lot of sense. But from a client standpoint, it could be confusing. Are we going up, down, negative, positive? So we keep it clean, because what we're really trying to build is the positive cognition. And in theory, at least, you would think that those two they co-vary. As the positive cognition goes up, the negative cognition goes down. To what degree?
Yeah.
Is that true? I don't know. Toby, you want to say something? Go ahead.
No, yeah, I didn't finish. Sorry. I wanted to make a point that I wasn't asking about the regular protocol. That makes actually very much sense to me that it doesn't. With the addiction protocol that I was doing with her. So that's why we first started with the positive associations that she has with it, then the negative emotions, consequences that she realizes. And when I had all of them and we were in the middle, and I would ask her during the breaks about the body and the validity of cognition, which was her goal of, what she wanted to accomplish. And I was also asking her about the positive to see if it was actually like the association, if it was going down. And I was also asking her about the negative, which makes sense because the negative is what we want to go up with the addiction.
Right.
But then I said to her, I shared with her, I said, at the end, I said to her at the last round, I didn't ask you about the positive because I realized that maybe it's bringing it up and we don't want to associate it with it. We want to associate with it like less. And she said to me, actually, because really the numbers were showing that they were both very strong. Her positive associations were still strong, and her negative ones were strong.
Getting higher. Yeah.
And she said it got a drop higher, like the negative. And she said to me, she's like, no, I think it's good because I need to remember that they're both there. They're both in existence. They're both there and they're both strong. And we were talking about it. And I guess the debrief a little bit that she made like a few like interesting like comments. And one of them was that, first of all, that she really felt like it was important for her to like really even if the numbers didn't switch very much, like the VOC like got really just one number higher from a 2 to a 3. We only did a few rounds, but she felt like just sticking to like just like forcing her to like focus on it and not like running away from it and verbalizing it was very hard and important. Like she said, like hard and tiring and important. And she said she feels like in the coming days when she has that image and she has the associations, like she could associate now, like she'll consciously associate to the negative and she'll be able to like make a choice. And she also said that she knows that even when she decides, because this is about drinking, when she decides to drink, which will happen, she thinks, she doesn't want to consider it a failure to the process. She wants it to like she thinks that it's part of like, she doesn't want to consider a failure to the process. She doesn't She doesn't consider when she's drinking, she doesn't associate that to shame, but actually the next day when she doesn't feel well, she associates
Okay,
that
so
more to shame.
let me address it. First of all, I neglected to welcome the new members of the group. We have two new members. We have Natalie and Ahuva. I think everybody else is old timers, not Alzheimer's, old timers. But let me address Sharon. Um, so what I think she's saying is, and this is a very important principle or concept, especially with the addiction protocol, because EMDR is uniquely qualified to really desensitize, neutralize trauma. But when you're dealing with addiction, it's not, you know, the expectation that it's just going to go away after one session, like trauma can. It's not happening, generally speaking. But what she's saying is, at least it's opening up my awareness
Mhm.
of the negative consequences, the negative associations with the addictive behavior. So that the next time I do that, at least that will, so I'll start to build the negative association or those neural pathways associated with the negative consequences over time. And that's a very important distinction between standard trauma therapy. Because we're just trying, with the standard trauma therapy, we're just trying to neutralize the trauma. But we're not dealing with necessarily any very entrenched behavioral patterns. So now the other thing I was going to say is that with the addiction protocol, you're probably going to need to do a lot more EMDR to get the results than you do with a standard trauma. You want to say something, Tova? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to what Sharon was saying that I feel like go going through, I don't know if she was saying or you were saying it, but it's concentrating on the negative cognition could bring that could help not release that wiring. You're like the wiring is you're kind of still going into it, and the wiring can continue in that way.
The
I
positive.
would say like the positive cognition, not in your case with the
And the
addiction,
addiction or the standard protocol?
I'm talking about standard now because
Okay.
the addiction I
Okay.
know
We have
realize
to.
the opposite. But yeah, but in general, the one that you're working to decrease in a regular standard protocol, I would imagine not to. The reason would be not as much confusing as it is like to stop rewiring it. And the more attention you give to it, the more you're keeping the wiring there. I would
Exactly.
imagine. What does that sound like?
Well, it really depends. If you are within the context of bilateral stimulation, the more that you focus on it, the more desensitized it becomes,
Oh, I see. Right.
or detached you become. So, and you're able to let go of the image or let go of the associated emotions, the negative cognition. So you want to keep focusing on it. And at the same time, you want to start building up the new cognition and
Right.
I'm
Okay.
attached to that new narrative about yourself.
Mhm.
Standard. Does that
Yeah.
help?
Right, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
what Tova was saying that
Yeah.
we're not going to ask how much we rate the negative self-belief. We're going to focus on the positive self-belief because
That's
we're trying
exactly
to strengthen.
that's
I think
exactly
that's
right. And that may be another reason, actually, now that I think about it, why we don't rate the negative cognition, because we want to focus our attention on the new positive cognition,
what you were saying,
build up
Tova,
those
right?
new neural
That's
pathways.
what I was saying. Yeah, that is what I was saying. But then you said that when we have the BLS with it, it actually is helpful to go
I
into
think he
it.
meant the
That's why
image.
we say focus on that image.
Sharon, what would we do without you? Yeah, go ahead.
That's why we want them to focus on the image while they're doing the bilateral stimulation, because that's where the desensitization comes from. You don't want to focus away from it. You want to focus on it, but now with the left brain engaged. So
Right.
the processing centers can look at it from a different angle. And then over time, that because of that chemical reaction that degrades a memory trace, you become more and more detached. Either you can't see it, or at least you become more detached from that image. But you don't want to focus away from it in the standard procedure, standard protocol, because the goal is to be able to desensitize.
So with the addiction protocol, with the body sensation, I wasn't even sure what I was gonna expect to happen. I didn't know what we want because she was focusing on something that was hard for her, like about like image of like her drinking. So she was like, there's, a stress in her chest, like an anxiety. And it's almost like, why would it go down? Because she's focusing on something that's not.
Well, that's but the whole principle behind desensitization, like if you look at any desensitization paradigm, most people who are dealing with anxiety, phobias, trauma, they want to focus away from it because it's too stressful. So
Right.
it just keeps staying alive. But with a desensitization paradigm, the more you confront it, like with progressive relaxation, progressive exposure, you want to keep exposing them, getting to focus on it so that they can become desensitized where it doesn't really affect them anymore. So we want them to focus on that image over time, especially with a bilateral stimulation. And that's the unique effectiveness of EMDR over all the other trauma treatments, is that this bilateral stimulation of the brain amplifies and accelerates the desensitization process, because that chemical literally detaches the person from their emotional association and also from the memory trace. So, but you have to focus on it. Anyway,
That's interesting. She felt that positive of focusing on it, the importance of focusing on it, even though the body.
Sorry, something happened with the volume. Can everybody hear each other?
maybe you didn't get a chance to practice.
No, I actually returned Erev Shabbat, but I haven't gone back to work yet. And while I was Ba'aretz, my head was on totally different things. But I just wanted to clarify, because I am somewhat new to this and I'm getting a little confused when what you were talking about. First, I thought you were saying that with the bilateral stimulation, you wanted the client to focus on the positive image, the positive cognition. But then most recently, I thought you said that you wanted them to focus on the negative to desensitize it. So I'm a little confused.
Okay, so the standard protocol requires that a person go back to the negative image and the negative cognition while they're doing the bilateral stimulation. Now, they go straight to the positive cognition while they're still in their right brain, which is very difficult. What we do is we let them stay in that negative image and with the negative cognition, and then to focus on the emotions that come from there, the body sensations, and then we start the eye movements to move them into the left brain. And once they're in that left brain, we want them to start orienting towards an alternative narrative, a positive cognition that can reprocess that trauma. So they're still in that trauma, but now that they're in their left brain, they can now reprocess it and have a different story, a different narrative, a different way of experiencing it based on the logic and the rational thinking of the left brain instead of the emotional thinking of the limbic system of the right brain. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, good question. Good question. Okay. How are you doing, Natalie? Are you with us?
I am with you. I'm sorry I can't have my camera on. I am with you. I have not I'm still processing everything that we learned, and but I haven't had a chance to practice it. I haven't practiced it yet, no.
No problem. Do you have any questions or comments? Because I know
Um, no, I do not. Not that I can formulate, but thank you.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Yes, Veronica. Hello. Nice seeing you. We can't hear you. You're on mute. Better.
Now?
Yes.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. I have question about childhood abuse and age 8, 9. I don't know how to start with logic and rational processing. because there is a lot of shame and blame herself. Even the client tried to talk to her mother. I really don't know what positive image I can bring to her left brain. So I need
Remember, we're
help.
not looking for a positive image as per se. We're using the negative image, but we're trying to reprocess it. So, like for example, this is such a common dynamic. So I'm going to assume that this is what happens. Children are very egocentric by nature, developmentally. They're very self-centered. So when somebody mistreats them or abuses them, they often, not always, they often assume there's something defective, there's something wrong about them. Yeah, which is very, very often. I mean, how often do we see that? Very often. So when they are still stuck at that 9-year level, they are filled with shame because there was something that was about them. When I work with adults who are sexually abused as children, I would say the vast majority of them feel shame because there was something about them that attracted the adult. There was something about them that may have initiated it. They take responsibility for it. So they're in the image, and that, Nebuch, they're in tremendous distress. But as they get into that left brain and the processing centers get activated, they're able to start getting logical and say, wait a minute, I was just a kid. This is not my fault. This is not about me. This is some pervert, some perpetrator who was really a sick guy who took advantage of me and my innocence. This is not about me, which can be so liberating, so freeing for them to really take the responsibility and the shame off of their shoulders and put it where it belongs with the perpetrator. But we're not looking for a positive image necessarily. Now, you could be creative, and after you've gotten this all through this process, and they've let go of the shame and the blame and the negative emotions and the body sensations, and they're clearer, if you want to be creative, you could say, well, can you come up with a positive image that represents the new cognition? Like, for example, let's say that a person, this happens a lot with the men that I work with who were abused. They're very ashamed that they weren't strong enough to fight back or to push away. That's common. So they feel very weak. They feel very, what's the word? Impotent. Literally, not literally impotent, but just powerless to do anything. So they feel powerless, weak. And once we cleared it and they realize, wait a minute, this has nothing to do. I was just a kid. That's ridiculous. You can then, if you want, I'm glad that you brought this up. You can create what would be an image that represents your power, and let them go with it. What did they come up with? And then you use the bilateral simulation to install that new image, and to replace the image of the trauma. Does that help?
So I can just tell you what you can lead that little girl, that you can tell that little girl from your rational cognitional brain. That's what story, what you have to tell
What would
you
you like to
now,
be able to say about yourself?
now,
Yeah,
from the rational
adult.
perspective.
And by the way, you know what I do also? If they have children, I'll say, if something, God forbid, happened to one of your children, would you say, shame on you, this is your fault? And they go, no, of course not. So what would you say to your child? And then they would say, whatever, this is not your fault. It was, so then I would say, can you say that to yourself? And sometimes I can be very emotional because it's a breakthrough that for the first time, they're changing the narrative that this is not their fault. They have nothing to be ashamed of. And that could be the therapeutic breakthrough. Good question, Veronica. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question or comment.
Hi, Pearl.
Hello. Hello. Sorry, I'm out. So I'm just trying to, I'm going to mute myself because I'm in a very noisy spot.
Okay, thank you.
I would love to hear more about what happened with Michal in our last group.
Yeah,
It was
so
amazing.
actually, I've been in touch with her.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're not surprised by that. So for the people that weren't in the last training, we had a volunteer,
Told me she got sick.
yeah, who participated in the demonstration, and it was a very intense experience. She had her parents made a decision not without really consulting the kids to make Aliyah when she was 15. She was very stable. She was a nice religious girl, and they moved her to Israel, put her in a pretty secular school. There was a lot of sex, drinking, some drugs, and she was really traumatized. And when she tried to talk to her parents, they just couldn't really deal with her emotions, and she holds a lot of resentment. And at the EMDR, she was able to desensitize the emotions associated with the trauma, and to be able to focus on the fact that she made it through, and that because she had kind of gone off a little bit, she's back, she's a religious person, she's got a family, and that she was very proud that she was an attuned parent. But she was not able to forgive her parents. When I asked her, is there any space for her to have, to understand, she shut me down right away. And then after the session, when I asked her about her parents' experience, both of them had been through a tremendous amount of trauma, and they were shut down emotionally. The father was a second child of a girl who got married when she was 13. And she had him when she was 15. She had a bunch of kids. There was nobody home. There was no emotional anything. Um, and then I asked her, I said, like, maybe, can you see why maybe it's not reasonable to expect him to be emotionally available to you based on his experience? And the mother was a child of Holocaust survivors. So she has been sending me voicemails, and that she has, and this goes to share, was it Sharon's point about, about that sometimes it takes time after EMDR, they continue to process, and that's a very important prompt when you do it. So you may continue the processing. And you want to be able to say that. I think it's in the protocol. And she said that she has come to a different understanding of her experience as a result of not the EMDR session that we did, but this conversation we had afterwards. And that helped to facilitate a reprocessing of her feelings towards her parents. And she said that the last time she said that she's let go of a lot of the resentment and the anger towards her parents. She hasn't yet forgiven them fully, but that's her new goal.
What was it that you said? Hello?
Yeah.
You still there?
Yeah.
You don't hear me?
I don't see you.
You don't see me. Well, I'm not to look at. I'm still
There
here.
you are. Okay. What did you say to her? What was the discussion after the fact?
I don't know. There are people from different kufot of the training, so I don't know if everybody heard me talk about genogram. But a genogram is basically a look at the generations that came before you, and you kind of write it down in terms of all the siblings and the siblings of your parents and their parents, and then you just go to the degree that you can to see like what happened that caused your parents to default as parents or to do whatever they did, whether it was abuse or neglect. It just broadens the context. And quite often when I do this with people, that broader picture enables them to have some understanding, if not empathy, for their parents, because quite often abusive parents were abused themselves, or neglected parents aren't available emotionally. They're emotionally neglectful. Or abused people as children are not emotionally available. So once she was able to look back and tell me their stories, I just asked her, does that help you to create some space for empathy based on what they went through? And she couldn't do that. She was way too charged in the session. But afterwards, when I asked her that question, she was in her left brain and she was like nodding her head. She was, she was working it. And then what was really fascinating is that she continued the processing day after day. It didn't stop with the session. She kept on thinking about her parents and what they went through, and she was starting really to let go of the resentment and the anger that she held towards them, which, as those of you who participated, was really intense for good reason. She got yanked out of a perfectly normal life without any say, without any discussion, and moved to a strange country. And they didn't have the forethought about what it would take to what would happen to a girl who went to a religious school, to a secular school in Israel, what kind of effect that would have on her. And that's all she could focus on. But once she realized that these were really damaged people, she let go. Does that answer your question, Tova? Anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, I would like to mention that she also said that she tried to access it again afterwards and she couldn't. It was like an email that disappeared. She couldn't even find it at all. Like that was the first thing she said when we spoke to, we heard her the next
When
day.
she's on the phone. Yeah, she said that
Yeah,
she can't access the image, she can't access the
the image.
feelings, but she's yet, it's like she's on the road to
She's
forgiveness.
on the road.
She's
But
on
that
the
was
road. I mean,
that was pretty amazing. I mean, that was,
it was a really impactful experience. Um, and I think that what was so gratifying is that she had said to me in one of the voice notes that she just feels calmer in general. And I think
wow.
what she's realizing is how much this story and the trauma and the emotions associated with it were affecting her 30 years later.
Wow.
And like she didn't even realize it. And now until she started letting go of it. But it takes, this is an example where sometimes EMDR can clear things in one session, and sometimes it needs follow-up, so several follow-ups before they can really clear it. You never know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just ask, I wasn't at the training, but just listening to what you're saying. So therefore, it's vital to have contact, say the day after with your client when you've done EMDR with them, to just check that they are continuing or they're okay from the
That's
process.
a really good point. That's a really, really good point.
Day after or like a week, the next
No,
week?
I would imagine based on what Dr. G is saying that, if it's as intense as it was for her, then we don't know how intense it is sometimes for our clients. So therefore we need to check in. I would suggest the day after. I haven't done EMDR yet because I don't have many clients at the moment, but that would be my sense of what a professional would do, would be to check in the day after if it was so intense, or even if it wasn't so intense, just to check that they're okay.
Is that what you believe is the right thing in general, Dr. Goldwasser? Because there are different ideas about this.
Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that, Tova?
No, I'm saying some people will never ever touch base with a client after the session, and others might, yes, but I think most don't. So I don't know what
Most
your
don't.
opinion.
Most don't. What I do, which
I always invite them to contact me if they.
I was just going to say that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they're if they've gone through something. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but it sounds really, really heavy, and that her processing was really, really deep, which obviously really kind of must have frightened her to a certain degree. So if
Did it frighten her?
No, I don't think it frightened her.
okay,
I don't think it frightened her.
It
okay.
didn't frighten
What
her.
I'm
It just
asking is,
activated a lot of underlying resentment, rage, hurt.
fine. So I'm asking, for me, if I have a session with a client and it's been a really heavy session, then the following day I would check in out of courtesy
Yeah.
with my client to see how they're feeling. You're saying that some people don't do this and some people do this. I don't think it's a matter of protocol. I think it's a matter of understanding your relationship with your client, and kind of maybe that's just normal therapy for me. You know, if it's been a really heavy session, I will check in with them just out of courtesy to see how they're feeling.
So I'll tell you honestly, I've told many of you that I do psychedelic supported psychotherapy, and that part of the protocol is you check in because it's a real, really, really dramatic, intense experience, and you want to make, the next day is part of the process. That's the third, but the day after, I do check in. I want to make sure that they're okay. Now, the question that's being asked, doesn't it make sense to do that here? And my answer is yes. I think it does. I'm being very, very transparent here. I typically don't because I just, I have a very full schedule but as we're talking, I'm thinking I should at least send them a chat, a text, like, how are you doing? I think that would be very appropriate. So I appreciate the question. Next question.
On the other hand, I think that some clients, I don't know, I think it's most important to know the client. Because if you have a relationship with the client, that's what Susan said. Like, I think there are clients that you would get the intuition that even if it was a heavy session, like to just give them that time,
some space,
that ability to reach out to
Yeah.
you. At the end of the session, to please tell them, like, really, like, to invite them to reach out to you if they want. That's what I do personally. I'm not against reaching out to them. I just think that sometimes if they're okay and you're reaching out, it actually might have, I don't know, the opposite effect that you want to have.
So let me make a suggestion. This is just a suggestion. How do y'all feel about the idea of at the end saying, would you like for me to check in with you tomorrow? Or you can check in with me, or you can just take whatever time you want until we meet again.
That I like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably, you're covering your base, but you're giving them the power to not engage.
Exactly.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Can I ask a question on that? And they say, so you check in with them the next day and they say, actually, I'm doing really badly. I'm having a really, really hard time. Then what?
So it's a good question. Obviously, if you're going to be doing that, you should make sure you have enough time allowed to help them process it. You don't want to, how you doing? I'm really doing badly. Oh, okay, I got to get to my patient. That's not, you have to make sure that you have allowed time. I think you had some of that experience, Natalie, because you also were one of the participants in the in the demonstration. What would have helped you? Let me ask you this. What would have helped you the day after, the 2 days after, to help continue to process this?
That's a good question. What would have helped me? I think it would have helped if I would have had, like, if the therapist would have asked me. I mean, I sought my own help, like I sought help in my own way, in a different way. But I think, let's say you would have followed up with me and helped me through the next part, then I mean, I'm not coming with any
No. We're interested in feedback. You know what I'm thinking as you're speaking is that I think that if you do offer that check-in and they say we're doing really badly, I think it would be a priority to make time for a follow-up session so that it can be dealt with properly, not, al regel achat,
right.
That
Yes.
makes more sense.
That's a very helpful point.
And then also when you're offering at the end of the session, do you want me to check up on you or not, or whatever it is, and if you're not, if you're having a hard time, then maybe we'll do an extra session, because you're talking about also them paying an extra session. Like, it's not everyone could do that financial. It's not as clear cut as whatever. So all I'm saying is, I like the leaving it at them, telling them at the end, like, what would you like? Would you like me to check up with you? Do you want to, check in with me if you're like, feel welcome to check in with me? It's
Just in terms of the other option is to say, at the end of my day, if you want me to check in with you, I will, and give them the time that they need without necessarily charging them. So that you have some room to help them process this if they're really, really having a hard time. Yes, Nechama.
I kind of think that at the end of the session, I almost feel like it's an unfair thing to say that, would you like to hear from me tomorrow? Because like nobody is a prophet, nobody knows what their need is going to be. But I think it would maybe be more helpful to say, just as you experienced here, like the kind of churning up a lot of feelings that we did here, that may happen more, and it may be that you want to reach out to me in some way, and that would and because we both that this churns up feelings, if it feels like you want to reach out to me, really don't hesitate. It's like it's expected in this process that might happen. And at the same time, I also want to say to them, especially if there's been any kind of positive emotion in the session, that it would be a helpful thing if they happen to notice things being better, and that when I see them next, I'm not giving them homework, but that I'm likely to ask you what's been better, because that also, it sort of sets that positive anticipation to notice what's been better, and that
Yeah, I definitely hear that. So generally speaking, if this is done within the context of a therapeutic relationship, obviously there will be a session at some point after this, and you can prompt them to say no, anything there may be some continuing of the processing. You may want to take some notes so that we can address this at the next session, so that it can be really done more thoroughly and with some structure. I think that Natalie is bringing up a point when somebody's really not doing well, because sometimes it just opens up a lot. And that's when you say, listen, if you feel like you want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. I'm not sure I totally agree with you, Nechama, about offering to reach out to them, because all you're doing is offering them. If they say yes, I don't see any problem with that. If they say, no, I'm not so sure, I'll reach out to you if I need you, then. But, some people may really feel that they want their therapist to check in with them. That's why, everybody has their own personal choice. And that's why I think I like what I offered, because it empowers them to make the choice, not me. Got that? Okay.
Can I ask something? Would it be a good idea to tell them, like, at the end of the session, this may continue if you need, like, if you need, and then you're opening the door. If you need to reach out, feel free.
So Natalie, I wrote down something that I do tell people, which I, for whatever reason, did not include in the protocol, exactly what you're saying. I say to people that there are two things I say, which I just wrote down to add to the protocol, because this is a living document, evolving. I say to them, you may find that the processing continues. And that's normal. You may want to take some notes so that we can discuss it when we meet again. And the second thing I say to them, you may experience some mild headache or strain behind your eyes because you've used muscles and eye muscles that aren't normally used. It's totally normal. And if you want to take some kind of ibuprofen, like Motrin or Advil, it can help, but usually it goes away the next day. Those are the two things I say. So you're spot on, Natalie. Now, just for the sake of catching everybody up, without going into the details, because we don't have the time, and I think it's personal. What we learned so the difference between the first participant was this is a Ma'aseh Shahaya. This happened years ago, and she was holding on to it, and she was able to clear it, and really very impressively reprocess it to the point where she was seeing it very differently and very calm, because it happened. It's not continuing. She lives her life, and it's done. With Natalie's situation, she presented something that is very much ongoing. And if you remember the discussion about the different types of trauma, this is anybody will care to guess?
Chronic.
Chronic trauma. This is a chronic trauma. It's not going away. It's very painful. There aren't any easy solutions. And EMDR is not a magic pill or panacea that can take care of everything. I think that what it did for Natalie was at first she was kind of like, I don't think I have really much anything here. And then all of a sudden, all this wave of emotion came up, and it really hijacked her, because it's going on. It's very painful, and there aren't any real solutions. We came up with a couple of suggestions, but it activated a lot of pain that she kind of put aside to function. Because, at some level, Natalie, I think you agree, you've accepted the reality of the situation at some level. And that's why it is important. And again, we're learning each time I do the training, I'm learning something else to improve, that you make sure that when a person comes up to do a demonstration, that they do a trauma that isn't very severe, and that it's a real trauma from the past as opposed to something that's ongoing, because that kind of chronic trauma is not necessarily something that we can just kind of fix and put in a box and put in a closet, because it's ongoing. So there were two aspects of her experience that made it more complicated than the first person. Number one, that it's chronic and ongoing, and number two, there wasn't any, no, I wouldn't say that. There wasn't much to offer in terms of how to deal with the situation, other than some, I would say, more surface, to accept the situation, to not fight it, to try to let go of the resentment, to try to show up in practical solutions. But it doesn't change the situation. And EMDR is not going to change an ongoing trauma. So we learned something from that. And, I'll make sure that I fine tune that. Okay, it is now 6:00 Israel time. And by the way, I am here. For those of you, you're veterans, I'm in the process of making Aliyah. I moved here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mazal
Thank you. So I am.
Can I ask a quick question before we leave?
Yeah, also, can we get the updated protocol?
That was one of my questions, actually.
Like from this past training that I wasn't able to get to and whatever?
Yeah, I have all the notes, and I will work on it, and I'll get it to Susan so that she can distribute it to you. Okay?
Thank you.
That was my main question, so thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
If you're going to update it and go over it, can you make
Yes.
it available to
I'm
everyone?
going to update. I can do it next time. I can. But I'm doing this primarily because Susan's looking for things to do, Nebuch. I feel badly for her. She's pretty bored, and she's looking for some meaning in her life. So I'm going to give it to her so she can take care of it.
I just want to know if there's more things that we wouldn't get from that written update.
Yes, there are. There are.
No. I know that there are. So therefore, can it be given over to us in
I'm
either
just going to say that.
thing or in a separate meeting at a separate time?
No. I feel. Listen, we didn't give people proper notice. It was scheduled for today, but it didn't get on our calendars for whatever reason. So we didn't get people. I mean, we still had 10 people show, which is very nice. But we have, I think, probably close to 30 people that have been trained. that are participating in the supervision. So the next time we'll give them ample notice, and I will go over the modifications because I want everybody to experience, and we will let them know that it will be taped so that they can have access to it. Okay, we'll take care of it by next time.
Can I ask a tiny question? You mentioned the genogram, and I didn't quite understand if you do that routinely with everyone, or you only do it if it's an issue with like a parent or a family member, only in those situations.
The genogram is done typically when there is trauma or abuse from the parents, and instead of just staying stuck on the parents as villains, you open up the picture and see, well, what happened in the previous generation that affected them the way that came out that they were neglectful or abusive, and then what happened to their parents, if you can go that far, so that they have a context to their experience as opposed to just being a victim of these horrible parents. And that's what happened with this woman, that once she was able to really connect the dots in terms of what happened to her parents and why they were not available emotionally, why they couldn't understand what she was going through, and they didn't deal with the intense pain and emotions that she was going through. Once she was able to go back generation and generation, her grandparents were Holocaust survivors. Her grandparents on this side were very primitive people who let their daughter get married at 13, for God's sakes. I mean, so you just see the intergenerational trauma that unfortunately, and by the way, last piece, which is, I think, the piece de resistance, which made me feel really good. The last communication I had with her, I said, how good does it feel to know that you are making sure that the intergenerational trauma stops at your children's generation? And she said, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I could probably do better, but I know that it'll stop at my grandchildren's. And it's true that typically the intergenerational trauma goes to 3 generations, and it's in the Torah. It says Ador Shlishi. It's very, very it's almost established. I know just with my own personal situation, my parents were Holocaust survivors. Even though I'm totally perfect, of course, it affected me, in a variety of ways. And it definitely affected some of my older children who had more contact with my parents. And, my grandchildren, thank God, are like really thriving. You don't see any residual effect. Not that I know of, at least. I mean, they're just really healthy, thriving, happy kids because were that much more removed. These were great grandparents. Most of them had no contact with them. But some of the intergenerational effect is still there. But by the time the 4th generation, and the research seems to support this, that you don't really see the residual effect after the 3rd generation. But that's not 100% true. But the general trend is that it filters out after the 3rd generation. But when you do this genogram, back to your question, Ahuva, what you want to do is to be able to broaden out their perception of what happened to them so that they can let go of their narrative of their parents being villains. And it softens up the negative emotions, the harshness, when they realize their parents were a victim of their own trauma. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would encourage you to try it. I don't do it all the time, but I do. I don't necessarily do like I didn't do with this woman a formal genogram. We didn't write anything. I just asked her, like, what happened to your parents that caused them to be emotionally unavailable? And she just wrote the script, and it made so much sense. And then that helped her to connect dots. Like, oh wow, this is not just me being a victim; they were victims too. maybe, and that's why I asked him, can you open space for empathy? She couldn't right away. She got angry at me. She shut me down. But after she was able to get out of that right brain and start to be a little calmer and more open, and then when I asked her the story, she was able to create space for empathy, and it's helped her to heal. You know,
But
she's not,
that means, like in the session, she wasn't able to move the negative thoughts and feelings from the right side to the left.
she did about the experience, but not about her parents. She still held them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But she was able to, she was able to catch up developmentally. She wasn't stuck in, she was literally stuck in that 15-year-old brain.
Mm-hmm.
Really, and I don't know if you remember, I asked her, how old did she feel? She said she felt like she was like 15. And then
Yeah.
remember that? And she caught up developmentally,
Yes.
which was, really impressive. But she did not show the capacity to forgive her parents until after she continued the processing and we did this genogram concept.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it really can help the healing process. It's almost been invariable when I asked people about their parents' experience and they were traumatized, they were abused, that it softens all the anger and the resentment, which is empower. It lets, as we discussed, helps them let go of their victimhood, which is disempowering. And once you let go of that victimhood, you can feel empowered. Empathy is empowering. And that's why I think she feels much, much better. It was a really beautiful, demonstration of how EMDR can really be transformative. Natalie, are you still on? I think she got off. I'll reach out to her. I want to check in and see if there's anything I can do to help her. She really had a tough time. Okay, well, this was good, wasn't it?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Saying,
Thank you.
it wasn't really that great. You're full of yourself.
What?
I wish everyone a Gemar Chatima Tova, Chag Sameach,
Thank
Chaim
you.
B'Simcha.
Gam lacha.
And you should continue to do the good work you're doing, and we will pick up in a month. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The participants of the training had like the demonstrations?
Yeah.